Hey friends, my name's Connor and welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you who don't already know me, my name is Connor Diblin. I'm a fourth year medical student at King's College London, and this video is part of a series all about medical school interviews and helping you, aspiring medical students, do well. In this video we're going to go through my top 10 tips for doing well in an online interview. It's 2020, we're in the midst of the COVID pandemic, and pretty much all medical school interviews are going to be online. Almost all of the medical schools in the UK have already confirmed that they're going to be largely online, and the rest are soon to follow. Several have already even confirmed what platform they're going to be doing it on. I think 3 or 4 universities have confirmed they'll be on Zoom, and a couple have confirmed that they'll be on Microsoft Teams. Whatever video platform they decide to interview you on, these tips are going to be the same. We're going to have a look at 10 ways you can do better in an online interview. Now, lots of these tips are going to be shared between an online or an in-person interview because a lot of the behavior, a lot of the kind of preparation you can do is exactly the same. So firstly, I would say really try to get in the right headspace on the day. Now, that starts when you go to bed the day before. You need to try and get a good night's sleep. Try not to worry about the interview too much, and don't spend too much time kind of focusing and trying to memorize specific answers to questions. Just have a bit of an idea, have a bit of a read through of your notes, get a bit of an idea about what you're going to be trying to say. In the morning, make sure you have a breakfast, you have a glass of water ready just to kind of moisten your throat, because when you're just talking at a screen, sometimes you have to talk a bit louder than you would in person, and that can definitely get a bit wearing on your throat. Try to relax and get in the right headspace in the kind of hour or so before the interview. This might be by reading a book, listening to a podcast, listening to some music. Secondly, I would say you need to be wearing smart but also comfortable clothes. So you want to come across as professional and well put together, but you also don't want to be sitting there fiddling with your tie or having kind of some kind of scratchy collar or something that's making you fidget. Specific to video calls, I would really try and avoid wearing repetitive patterns, so that's things like pinstripes particularly, or very fine checks, because those can be very distorted by the video and they can come across looking very odd on the other end. So try and stick to kind of block colors. If you're a guy, try and wear like a white or a blue shirt, for example. The next tip is to prepare what you can. So you're never going to know exactly what questions are going to be asked. You're never going to know the specific skills I want you to explain, but you can have a really good go at preparing for the common questions. And you can make sure that you've read your personal statement recently, you're aware of what you've already said, and so you don't catch yourself out. Now here, it's really important that you're not tempted to cheat. It being online, there are probably lots of ways that people could cheat. Avoid all of them. Particularly, I've seen some people encouraging students to try and use things like post-it notes so that you can have some little bullet points there on your screen, but definitely do not do this, please. When someone's reading, it's very obvious. You just need to look at their eyes, and when you're reading, your eyes do a very particular scanning motion, and it's very obvious to an interviewer that you're reading something off of your screen. Interviewers are going to be looking out for people cheating. They're going to be more aware than ever that people can cheat in these kind of situations. As I've said previously, medical students are held to a very high professional standard, and cheating and lying are definite no's, and that is a definite kind of exclusion from even being considered. You need to be prepared to really throw yourself into any kind of role-playing situations you might have. Whether it's an MMI or a panel, interviewers love to have a kind of role-play section where you need to come across empathetic, you need to maybe break some bad news, maybe you need to speak to a fellow student about something controversial. You need to be prepared to really throw yourself into that and get into the role. Now, I know it can be a bit odd over videos to try and gain any kind of rapport, but a lot of the same things apply here to when you're talking to someone in person. Smiling when it's appropriate, keeping a neutral face when that's more appropriate. Things like nodding, shaking your head, making small sounds, like tutting. There are some very common phrases you can use to kind of build rapport, particularly when breaking bad news to someone. Phrases like, I understand this must be very hard for you, and affirming words like, yeah, of course. Just as in in-person interviews, when you're asked a question, you're not expected to instantly have an answer ready, because that just shows that you've managed to memorize some answers to questions. So really, it's always appropriate to take a breath before answering a question. You can either give some little kind of stalling answers like, oh, let me have a think about that for a second. Oh, that's a very interesting question, I hadn't considered that. Or let me just take a second to put my thoughts in order before I answer that question. You don't want to come across like you've memorized a script and you're just kind of, again, vomiting that up to the interviewer. So you want to come across as someone who's thoughtful and is taking your time with these questions. Fidgeting hands can be really distracting in an in-person interview or an online interview. In an in-person interview, I suggest things like clasping your hands like this, maybe even sitting on your hands if you're on the other side of a table from someone. For an online interview, there is probably more opportunity for you to fiddle with things. So I would recommend, if you have a keyboard and mouse, moving them just out of arm's reach across your desk, and maybe trying to keep your desk free of things like pens that you could be tapping. With the temperamental nature of the audio and the video in an online interview, any kind of additional random tapping sounds will just distract the interviewer from your fantastic answers. My next tip would be especially for a MMI interview where you've got multiple little mini stations, and that's that when you're given the vignette, and let me just explain what a vignette is. So for these interviews, and also now when you get into medical school and you have your OSCE exams, before your station, you're given a minute or so to read a little passage of text. And this is the vignette. This is kind of the instructions or the scenario for that station. So when you're given the vignette and you have a chance to read it, you need to obviously have a look and try and memorize any information on there that's pertinent to your answer. So what are they asking? Is there a name of a patient that you're supposed to be remembering? Is there some time or place that you should remember on here? But also think about what are the skills that they're going to be specifically asking you about in this station. Is this station going to be something about your commitment to medicine, at which point you're going to be having to rack your brain about your volunteering experience? Is this station maybe a little test of your numerical skills, and they're going to be showing you a graph and you need to be able to demonstrate that you have a good understanding of the basic sciences we all need before we study medicine? Try as much as possible to look into the camera rather than looking at your screen or around your room. This way, on the examiner's screen, they're going to be seeing you looking into their eyes. So this is the equivalent of maintaining eye contact while you're in an in-person interview. It can be obviously very tempting to either look at yourself while you answer a question, or to be looking at the examiner to try and gauge their reaction to your question. But when it's just you speaking to them, I think it's best to look into the camera where possible. In a medical school interview, you need to fake it till you make it. Even if you're not feeling confident, you need to come across as being at least partially confident, and ideally you should come across as enjoying your time in the interview. It's an honor to have received an interview from any medical school, and you should be excited to have even got to that stage. You're on video here, and so I really think it's best to smile wherever appropriate. And obviously I don't mean a big cheesy grin, but coming across as someone who's positive and confident and is aware that they have a fantastic opportunity for an amazing career ahead of them. The amazing thing about online interviews is that it's easier than ever to practice. Now you can practice even just by yourself, and it comes across as an accurate representation of what your interview will be like. Just set up your phone and you can video yourself, or ideally you want to sign up for something like Zoom, and using just a free account on Zoom you can call one other person for an unlimited time, and you can record all of your video and audio. That way you can do some mock interviews with your parents, your friends, your school, even a tutor. You can record your answers to questions, you can have a look over your video, and you can see what you think you need to improve. This is also a great way of seeing how you're going to come across. It's a good way of trialing out any outfits or any different locations for your interview on the day. I hope you found this video useful. It ended up being 11, not 10 tips, but that's okay, you get them for free. If you haven't yet heard from the medical schools about whether you have an interview or not, then don't worry. In this case, no news is good news. Interview seasons at medical schools lasts from November right through to March. So if you haven't been rejected, then you definitely still have a chance of getting an interview. There's going to be tons more content for you aspiring medical students coming out on the channel in the next few months, so please make sure you subscribe and hit that little notification bell. That way you're notified whenever a new video comes out. Make sure you check out the other videos in this playlist. They are all there for aspiring medical students to help you with your applications, and particularly with interviews at this time of year. Thanks so much for watching.